If I could teach the whole world one thing, it would be the power in trusting your intuition. So much gets led astray because we don't trust our inner knowing and how to access it. And that's the goal here. The Empowered Intuitive is here to bridge the gap in your spiritual knowledge, to open your mind and give you permission to decide what's best for you and the world around you. And I'm here to be real and silly and have fun while doing it. As promised, here is part 2 of this super long deep dive into navigating difficult relationships with family members or friends or people you love in your life and cycle breaking. I really hope you enjoy the second part as much as you enjoyed the first part. So let's get into it. Yeah. Hey, so just a quick side note, as I was editing this podcast, that weird echo effect is present in a few spots. I tried to edit it out as best as I can, but it's not clearing it up. I think I either have a really strong ghost or I need to get a new microphone. So it's not horrible to listen. It just sounds different if you do notice it. Now we're going to talk about the heavy piece, the reason why I wanted to make this episode. Because sometimes we don't get family members that allow us that are as open and willing to have healing. And that's where I was saying, like, you have to heal it on your own. So I'm just gonna gloss through my relationship with my mother. Surprise, surprise, y'all. I've probably talked about this more times. Like, it's not that I care to. I don't mind being an example for healing. That's what I'm supposed to do according to my human design. So I'm going to drink some tea and then I'm going to hydrate my throat for those who watched Pose. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some context. Hopefully not going to be that crazy. My mother and I kind of talked about it a little bit. She did the best that she could to raise me. She has limitations. My largest issue with her is that she's emotionally unavailable. And in this process, I'm telling you sort of out of order because healing is nonlinear and I've been healing this since college. I definitely growing up had a lot of beef with my mother. I felt it was very irrational and unfair the ways that I was raised. I was forced to be an adult and then I was a parentified child is what it's called. There's a lot of mixed in stuff. So I did grow up feeling like there was a lot of pieces and being aware that there was a lot of pieces about my mother that I didn't like and that I felt strong resistance to, especially because we both have Aries moons. So we both have the heart of a warrior and we both will die on our sword. So, I had that. Then I went to college and then I learned a lot of the things that I thought were okay or good about my mother were actually not, and they weren't healthy. And I was actually put through a lot of unnecessary trauma or had to carry a lot of unnecessary trauma because I wasn't raised with someone who could be emotionally available and teach me these pieces. And then I told her about that and she basically was like, what does your therapist know about me? Your therapist has never even met me. Like, how, like the ego piece, right? So I didn't really tell her about the healing that I was doing in regards to her. And she was willing to hear the stuff not about her, which is how you know it's the ego piece. And I'm trying to think like timeline wise. So after college, there was like an issue with my aunt, and then her and my aunt stopped talking. Same pattern that we're in with my mother. And I struggled because I am queer. And then, that's what it was. Then I was like, I realized I was non-binary and I wanted to change my name. And my mother had an issue with that. She was like, you're always going to be my daughter. Like, I'm not going to see you any differently. And do I have to do this? And like, this is hard for me. Like, just being resistant to acknowledging and just being like, Thank you for sharing this part of yourself with me. I would love to support you in this, right? And that really caused a flare up of the trauma that I had. So, because my mother was emotionally unavailable, the main trauma that I've worked through years to understand and to heal from is that I was constantly looking and seeking for the love and validation, and care and emotional care from a mother that didn't exist. This is what I needed. The needs that I had were not what my mom could provide. It's not who she is. And I struggled because when you have this kind of deep wound, generational like issue with a family member, it can be like this self-fulfilling prophecy, this irrational piece where we're constantly putting ourselves in harm and re-triggering ourselves and recreating and re-experiencing the same conversations over and over, but not having forward movement because the other person is not willing to acknowledge and open up and share. So if you feel like you're stuck in that kind of cycle, that's very difficult. I feel like it's sometimes harder than some of the other pieces, like not to rank people's traumas, not in any way, but in terms of how I've experienced sexual trauma and I've experienced this, I feel like this was harder for me to move through than the sexual trauma. And it's not that I've moved through the sexual trauma completely, but it's more straightforward with the sexual trauma. It's more understandable. Like, you know what you need, you know that it was wrong, you can place the blame, boom, you know, that's oversimplifying. Obviously, I'm way oversimplifying. But with this kind of thing, it's more nebulous because it's like there's good things and there's bad things. There's positive and there's harm. And then there's sometimes you feel like there's a breakthrough or they're trying, and then there's going backwards. And then, you know, it's like you have time where it's okay and then you have a flare up, right? So I feel like it's more nebulous because it's not so straightforward in terms of like where we're going. And also it's not something that's as consciously available to a lot of people. Like, I didn't realize that I was in this cycle of desperately seeking her to see me and to notice me and acknowledge me and value my feelings and have any sense of empathy for me, until like I started going to therapy and healing. And then I started working with an EFT practitioner, and then I worked with a grief counselor because I realized what I was doing was I needed to grieve the mother that I wanted but didn't get, because I was trying to fulfill my needs, which is what we're supposed to do, what my inner child was guiding me to do. But I was trying to fulfill those needs with someone who couldn't fulfill them. And that can be very, very difficult to come to realization with, because it can be heartbreaking to realize I've been really trying to seek healing with the person that harmed me. And I really want this new leaf to turn over so that we can have the relationship that I've thought of or wanted in my head, or not necessarily. Well, at times I was very locked in, and that's what I'm saying. It's important to not be super locked in with it has to be this one way or I need it to be this one way. But I wanted the healing to be with this. Like, I wanted to have a better relationship with this person. I felt like it was available to me and I desperately wanted it. I desperately wanted her to see me and to acknowledge me. And so it came to a point where like every conversation would end with an argument, or me crying, or her hanging up on me, or me speaking meanly to her, just because I wanted to, like, you know, put the knife deeper. And I realized like that is unhealthy because I did healing before. And I had to take a break. I took a year of not speaking to her. And even in that year of not speaking to her, I felt more hurt because she didn't reach out to me. She didn't put in my opinion, effort and say, I want to fight for this and I want to do this. She just accepted the boundary, which on paper is arguably the healthy piece, right? But what I really desperately wanted was for her to see me and to be like, no, I see your feelings and I'm here for you. And so then I did that grief counseling with my cousin Joni. So if any of you want to work through some grief stuff, let me know. I'll connect you. And she has a PhD. She's amazing. And in that, I was able to address that heavy burden of the grief of longing for something that will never exist, right? That's a lot of grief, is like, this person doesn't exist here in a physical form anymore. And I'm so sad about that. I cannot put my feelings and my care and have these experiences that I want. So I was grieving that piece, right? I did inner child healing work where I connected with my child, and this is what I do with clients. And what my child needed was a new mother, a different mother. Just didn't even want, because even my inner child knew that this mother that I have here on earth is probably not going to be able to fulfill that. And there was so much pain and hurt throughout the years that my inner child was like, I do not want this person as my mother. Because when I do inner child healing with people and we have these types of pieces come up, you have the option to use the same parent to swap out for the parent's higher self. So they look like the parent, sound like them, act like them, but they're healed. Or you get a new parent. My inner child was like, new parent. And I picked my aunt, a different aunt, not the one I was talking about, that has been very nourishing to my inner child throughout my life. So that's part of the healing that I did without her, because I realized I'm not getting anywhere with her. I feel like every time we're just repeating the same cycle, not having forward movement. And I will say it wasn't my fault. I really kept trying to bring up these situations and address them and have forward movement, but she is being emotionally unavailable. She doesn't have the bandwidth because she doesn't deal with her own feelings. So she couldn't hold space for me because she still had so many pieces from her own feelings that whenever I brought up my feelings, it would become about her. What about my feelings? What about this and that? It's like, I'm not your parent. I'm not here to do that. I brought up this conversation because I wanted to seek healing. If you wanted to bring up some issue you had, you could have done that at any time. But this space I've asked for me, right? And she would devalue or not listen, ignore me, change the subject, hang up on me, every time we get close to having some breakthrough or some understanding, no empathy, no feeling, shutting down, pushing away, avoiding. And that is the way. And so then after I did that grief counseling, and I had that over a year break from speaking to her, minus like calling her on like Mother's Day and stuff like that. We had a conversation, and literally that first conversation when I was like, hey, I'm ready to speak to you again. I did healing. Think I'm good with where we're at. I'm ready to have a relationship with you again because I don't think I'll be like arguing with you every time we have a conversation. She actually gave me what I was seeking for all those years, which is what happens. And that's how we know that this stuff works, because the energy that you're putting out when you heal on your own shifts. And so these people, whether they're conscious of it or not, will react to you differently because your energy output is different. It's like before I was putting out the energy of like, why don't you see me? Why don't you love me? Why don't you hear me? Why don't you acknowledge me? And she was like, oh, I can't. And then when I reapproached that conversation or that relationship after healing, I wasn't looking for it because I fulfilled that need for myself. I was completely beyond it. She was like, oh, like my energy was like, I can talk about these things. I'm settled in these things. I'm not super emotional about these things. Like, I'm not seeking this. I'm not blaming you. I'm not this or that. I feel complete. She was like, tell me about that. Like, and sat and listened to me speak about all the stuff that I wanted her to listen to me speak about and never did. And she apologized to me, and she saw me more clearly. And I was able to communicate without being as emotional because she's very anti-emotions. She received it, right? So I felt like, wow, this is amazing. We're going to turn over a new leaf. Like, I don't need this. And she actually finally gave it to me. Like, there's growth happening. And we, like I said, are both still Aries moon, so we're both very stubborn. And as we continued on, one of the things that I was stuck in this cycle was being a healer, and helping people heal these types of things with therapy and with sessions and energy healing and all types of stuff, I could easily see, well, I could more clearly see what the wound was that she was holding. And so I did that thing that I recommended in the beginning, and I looked at it from her perspective, right? Because that was something that the therapist taught me all those years ago. What was her upbringing? What are her boundaries and blocks and limits? Is she capable of doing these things? Has she ever done them? Has she ever indicated that she wants to do them and continue to do them, right? Like, I realized she's not able to understand and to hold space for me emotionally because she is stuck in her traumas that she hasn't moved through. So having felt like a lot of the wounding with my mother was healed, I then took it upon myself to try and heal my mother. I don't recommend this. It's not my job. And that was part of the cycle that I had to learn. And I feel like I recently learned that it is not my job to heal her if she is not ready to be healed and she has not expressed that she's willing to do that. I can't force her. And that's sort of what I was trying to do, was to have conversations and to illustrate points and bring up, like, I wasn't like trying to like put her in a class or something or trying to do like therapy with her, but I was just trying to like really bring it to the table in the forefront and be like, this is an issue that you have. You should address this. And she was like, I don't think this is an issue for me. I feel completely comfortable in the choices that I've made. I've learned to live with the things that I'm carrying, and that's that. And it's not up for discussion. And I don't want you to keep trying. She kept saying like, stop trying to heal me. Stop trying to bring this up. I'm not willing and open for this. And I kept thinking, maybe next time I'll say the right words. Maybe next time she'll be in a little bit better mood, or all these things. And so then we kind of had that pattern again where we were upset after every conversation. And I was very frustrated. And I wasn't talking to her again. And the reason why I don't talk is that's the boundary, is because I felt like every time we were talking, it was messy. And so I didn't want to create more harm. And my grandfather last year started to get sick. And my mom was like, yo, grandpa's getting sick. Like, we should fly to New York and go be there for him. And I was like, say less. So we flew there, and while we were there, we like stayed in the same, like my grandpa and grandma's house. They have like this big basement area with like pull-out beds. And so we were staying there together, and we mended our relationship because it was like, we can put this aside for a family member that is in need, that is very important to us. And when we left, it was more open. And I was like, you know what? It's not so bad. Like, she's not that, like, we had a good time. So it was like, wow, when it's good, it's good. Like, I feel like our relationship is shifting because she's not treating me like a child so much anymore. And she's able to like communicate with me, and this feels good. And my mom was probably thinking like, wow, you're not bringing up all my bullshit all the time. I am fine with that. And when we left, my grandfather was doing better, and then he started to decline again. And I flew back again to be with him, and my mom didn't, for her own reasons. And that caused a rift, because our family was like, why are you not here? And she felt, and I kept repeating that cycle of trying to get her to see it, trying to get her to notice. And I kept trying to have conversations with her, convincing her to come out, convincing her that it was important. And she was like, I've told you my boundary. You are not listening to my boundary. Like, I don't want to come. And she wasn't thinking about coming for me or my other family members or my grandma. She was just thinking about, is she able to do this? Yes or no? And that felt very selfish to our family members at the time. And then afterwards, after my grandfather passed away, we were trying to plan a family vacation before he did. And so I was like, oh, we should continue like planning this family vacation. and kind of do it in his honor. And again, my mom is just, there's so many things I'm oversimplifying, but she's a very stubborn person. And she's one of those people where it's like everything has an excuse or a complaint. And it's just very hard. Like we were literally on the phone, like a conference call with family members for like 2 hours because she's like, no, not this. No, not that. No, not this. No, not that. No, not this. And then we're like, so what is it? Tell us what you want and we'll work with those parameters. I don't know. I'll know it when I see it. Like, it's just like really frustrating stuff like that. And I was like struggling in that pattern to heal her and make her see. And I did actually a reading with a psychic medium. There's a space here in Los Feliz named Liberate that I do readings out of, and we are bringing on a new psychic. So we like do like mini sessions to make sure that they have the skills that they claim that they do. And I asked if she could connect to my grandfather. And the first question I asked her was, what advice do you have for dealing with my mother? Because my mom had a really good relationship with my grandfather, according to her. My grandfather would just be on the phone with her and just be like, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And she enjoyed that. That is the same exact advice that my grandfather gave me. He was like, it's not your job to heal her. She's like in her 60s. If she wanted to heal by now, she would have. And you know that the only way that she knows how to move through the world is through a victim mentality. So don't give her fuel to the fire for her to twist your words and to use them against you. And he said, it's called gray rocking. If you have narcissistic family members or family members with narcissistic tendencies, gray rocking is a communication tactic where you pretend that you're a boring gray rock and you give them literally nothing. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. You don't say. And those are examples of how to gray rock. And I was like, okay. And he kept saying, it is not your job to heal her. It is not your job. It is not your job. And that was the piece that I was struggling with, because I'm like, it's literally my job that people pay me to do. And it would be so easy for me to help give her this stuff so she can get the healing that she needs. And it's like that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I took a step back from trying to heal her. And it was working. We were communicating, but there were still pieces that I felt my body was frustrated about, because there were still more boundaries that needed to be set. And I still was not being firm in those boundaries. And because there's like normal stuff in a relationship that's not healthy. And where am I going with this? This is like more recent. This is like end of last year. And hold on, let me gather my thoughts, because for some reason they've left my head. We are not healing. Yes, not healing her. Oh, and then all the stuff started happening with the election and then the inauguration. And my mom has very different beliefs on certain things around politics. And I'm very morals and belief driven. And so I'm like, if I say that I'm for this, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to, it's like part of being an activist is like, I'm communicating with the people, like the information that I've learned and helping bring them to the other side and teach them, I know it's like largely opinion based, but it's the right thing to do. Like the other side is for genocide. The other side is for like just being racist and being homophobic and all these things. Like to me, that's not opinion. That's like right and wrong, right? Like if you can't accept other people and let them live their life and you want to control them, that's weird. to put it nicely. And so we clashed about that, and we had another argument because I was like, yo, like this is an emotionally charged thing. There's a lot of scared stuff going around. We don't know where the world is going, the US is going. And I like was like, bro, like come on, man. Like I thought we went through this. And she got really upset. She was like, stop trying to make me believe what you believe. And I like that you can't just force me to do what you want me to do. And I was like, I'm not forcing you. I'm giving you information and facts. And I'm just really emotionally excited. Like as an Aries moon, you start yelling. And it's not, I will say, it's not anything. This is going to sound weird, but my mother has an Aries moon. I grew up with her yelling literally an inch away from my face. And if I tried to back up, she would tell me not to back up. So I grew up in a household where someone literally told me to my face, like, you need to toughen up and stop being so emotionally sensitive to the way that I am. And you just need to know, like, this is not my intention. And if I'm coming at you and I'm hot and I'm in your face, that's just how I am. And you better accept it. And so over the years, I have tried to adapt that mentality with her because it's very irrational, like her needs and wants. So I try and play by her game and her rules, which I know is a huge red flag. This is part of the healing that we're talking about. And I was like, so I was like, if this person is telling me just accept me at face value, sucks to suck, this is just how I am. I'm like, I'm going to be raw and react however I react. And this person is clearly going to be understanding and just accept me for who I am because that's what she expects from everyone to do to her. That's not the case. It's very irrational. So she gets very upset by the way that I like talk or sound. She says my voice is annoying and like all these different things. So I was just being raw. And so I wasn't like yelling at her, like actually yelling, but it's like, oh my God, like, do you not know? Like Elon Musk is doing this and blah, 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 like that type of thing. And like, I even asked her, cause my 30th birthday is coming up, like if she could, do this. She had like shares in Tesla and I was like, can you sell the shares for my birthday present? Like, please. Like, I wasn't like telling her she had to. I was like trying to convince her. And she said I was bullying her and all these things. And it was like really heated. So we took a couple of days off. I actually hung up on her because I was like, I can't. And she texted my partner and brought my partner into it. And then like disrespected my partner when he shared, like, she asked him like if I'm still upset and he shared. He asked me what to say and he shared, I'm not upset. I'm just emotionally charged about this. And I didn't think that she was going to have these opinions and stuff. And she was like, no, you're wrong. Like, they're just emotional and they want me to believe what they want to believe. And this has gone on for too long and I'm going to set a stronger boundary. It's unacceptable. And I texted her and I was like, don't bring my partner into it and then disrespect him and just disregard everything that he shared with you. Like, if you have an issue, talk to me directly. And she was like, I was like, I don't think that this is fair. Like, I wasn't telling you what to do. I wasn't bullying you. I was just trying to tell you should do research and talking about facts. Like, I'm talking about facts. These aren't my feelings. These are things that are facing a lot of people in the world. And she didn't really respond to that, which I said is a MO of her. And then a couple of days passed and we were speaking on the phone. And I was like, I want to clear the air. I want to see where you're at with this and see if we can move past it. And she was like, yeah, about that. I've decided that like, you're just too emotional and I don't like the way that you talk to me. And so I'm going to set a boundary. You can only talk to me about these topics. And they were basically like surface level topics, like the weather, my job, my dog, and one other one. And I couldn't remember what it was because it was just like so ridiculous to me. And I was like, so you just, she was doing what I'm talking about, setting a boundary. I don't like the way that you're communicating with me. I don't like the way that our relationship is working. So I want to have this boundary. And for me, I have an 8th house sun, so I can't have surface level relationships. Like I have no desire to have a surface level relationship. And most people don't, especially with my mother. Like I can have a surface level relationship with a friend or someone I just met or like a stranger or whatever. That's fine. But I don't want to have a surface level relationship with my mother, especially because I've spent so many years to try to have a better relationship with my mother. And she was like, yeah, so it's either that or or like, don't talk to me, you know, like, you can only talk to me about these topics. And I was like, so you just want to have a surface or a level relationship? And she was like, yeah, that's it. Any other thing that you talk about, you end up stressing me out. And I don't want to deal with that, because she's avoidant. And I was really like floored by that. And I didn't really enjoy that. And then I feel like in this process of creating the like sort of like narrowing the path, like these are the options that are available to us, I feel like I'm finally understanding that it is not my job. I'm understanding this cycle. And I'm really seeing the ways in which I have been hurting and sacrificing myself on her behalf so that we can continue to have this relationship where she is not willing to budge or to do any of the work in the ways that I've asked her to. She has done, you know, certain things, like she does speak a little nicer to me because it was really harsh and I asked her to change. But she says like she just holds her tongue. So like her way of dealing with it is just avoiding it. And I like to deal with it through addressing it. So clearly we're not going to meet in the middle. And I realized in that conversation, like, maybe I'm just going to cut this person out of my life. Maybe that's where I'm at. And I told her, I was like, if this is the only option to have these surface level topics, like, I don't think I can have a relationship with you. And I'm willing to just not have you in my life. And this can be like our last conversation and it'll be that. And she was kind of like, if that's what you want, you know, like not willing to budge. And I was like, is this a negotiation? Can I speak on my behalf too? And she's like, I'm not willing to negotiate, but you can speak your truth. And I just saw myself repeating that same pattern, just crying and literally begging her to see me and to think about me and my emotions and my needs, and that having a relationship like that is not going to be worth it or healthy. And why was I so passionate about these topics? Because it affects me and my partner. We're part of the demographics that are being affected by this administration, and clearly fascism is affecting everyone. And so the reason why I'm being vulnerable and sharing this is, number one, to show you like we're human. Even someone like me still struggles with these things, and we all have a nonlinear path. And also, I personally just had this irrational belief of like not wanting to give up on someone, not wanting to stop trying to heal. But then in the process of my own healing journey, realizing that what I'm doing is hurting myself and sacrificing myself and my own needs so that I can continue to have this relationship that arguably doesn't fulfill any of my needs, but in my mind, I hope that it will fulfill my needs. And I feel like my mother has been pretty honest about like, take me at face value, and that's not going to happen. And I still kept like, well, maybe this time, well, maybe next time, well, maybe if I say it this way, well, maybe if I do it this way, maybe there'll be a breakthrough. And it's funny because the same day that I had that conversation, I had a meditation that I do once a month, and a 70-year-old mother and 30-year-old daughter came in, and it was the first time the mother was doing Reiki, and the daughter was the cycle breaker, the one who is spiritual in her family, and she had asked to bring in her mother, and her mother was kind of skeptical but was open to receiving that healing, and she had a really good experience. And it's just, I feel like the universe is like, nothing is coincidence to me, but it's like on the same day that I'm like, maybe I'm not going to have a relationship with my mother, I'm seeing an example of a family that is willing to do the work and is willing to be open and to change at any age. And my first thought in acknowledging that after the fact was, wow, it does exist out there in the world. And that's why I'm being shown this, not so that I can continue to have hope that this will happen with me and my mother, but just that I know that it happens and I get to help facilitate that for others. And that's really beautiful. And in the process of coming to these terms, to realizing like, maybe I have to set like a stronger boundary because I can't keep hurting myself at the expense of leaving the door open for someone and then being reduced to just having, like, in my opinion, a subpar relationship that I don't think I want to have with a mother. Like, I could talk about the weather to literally anyone on the street. But you can also Google the weather. Like, why do I need to talk about the weather? That's like, what do they call it? Small talk, right? So my point, well, I've talked about a few points, but the main point to tie it all together is to give you permission to see different examples of different types of boundaries and to make those decisions for yourself and to feel empowered to making what feels best for you and to giving yourself grace to move through this, right? This has been like years that I'm uncovering one layer, healing from another layer, repeating the cycle, uncovering another layer. And that is sometimes how it is with generational healing and with difficult family members. We might have, like on the flip side, with my father and I, we had a really shitty relationship and he caused a lot of pain and trauma emotionally for me growing up and physically for me growing up. And I didn't talk to him for about a year because he got married and didn't tell me. And I had to find out from my aunt. And my father has a history of lying. So I was like, this is the last straw for me. And in that process, he kept reaching out to me and he was like, hey, can we talk? I really want to mend our relationship. I want to see if we can move past this, and I'm willing to do whatever it is that we can do. And for me, that was enough. I was like, you're putting in effort and you are showing me that you care and that you want to work on this and you are imperfect, but you want to get better. And then we started slow. I told him, okay, this is my boundary. This is what I'm open and ready for. And he was like, great. Like, I will honor that boundary and we can, I was like, we're not going to talk all the time. We're going to talk sometimes. And now I call him like pretty much every day, and speak to him on the phone. And it's still taken some time for me to start opening up to him and sharing things in like my emotional field that I wasn't ready to share in my life. But now we're getting to that point where I can do that with him and do it for him, vice versa. So it's not to say that it's all bad. Like, there is versions where there is healing, right? Where we were able to move past that cycle of trauma and pain. And now if there's issues, I can tell him and not be scared that he's going to fly off the handle and do his old patterning, because he has also, in the process of opening up and saying, this is something I want, he has confronted and acknowledged some of the things that was harmful. So he has done some healing, right? And that is enough. You don't need to be all the way healed for certain scenarios. But with my mother, it was just like not wanting to set that hard boundary and not wanting to feel like I'm giving up and not wanting, no child doesn't want their parents in their life. Not the specific parent, but in theory, right? Like, no child wants to not have a parent. Every child wants to have someone that takes care of them and loves them and shows them that they care for them. And like, I feel like the more I talk about this issue, the more I see the rationality that I was stuck in and that I wanted a specific thing to happen where I couldn't see. I'm literally begging for this person to care about me. I'm trying to convince this person about why honoring my pronouns are important or using my chosen name is important, instead of this person just wanting to be let in and wanting to know and asking. So that's like big. We talked about a few big ones, I feel, because with my stepdad, that was a big one. That's a boundary. I just set that boundary. I don't go there. I don't visit. I don't call him. And arguably I have less anger towards him now. Like, he's actually more supportive than my mother is. But it's a complex and complicated piece. And so again, as we wrap this up, because I didn't realize I was talking for literally 2 hours, I will just yap about anything. I hope that this helped you. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, right? Do what you're ready for. And you saw I did a lot of these pieces in layers. I left I came back because it was the reason why I needed to set the boundary and not talk to my mother for over a year was it's really hard to heal when you're still in the cycle, when you're still in the environment, when you're still interacting with the person that and they're actively re-traumatizing you. So I felt that I wasn't making any progress by continually having these arguments and repeating the cycle. And I was just getting upset every single time. And I just needed to take a step back and do my healing and reapproach the relationship when I felt I was ready, because they made it that my mom made it clear she was not going to change and not going to do much to meet me halfway, right? Even in her negotiations, she was like, fine, I'm just not going to say anything. And I was like, I don't want you to not say anything. I want you to feel like I want to have like the give and take in a conversation, but that's the way that you've decided that you want to deal with this. Okay, I'll try and go with it. I'll try and make it work. So it is multi-layered and it is multifaceted, and it can feel like you make a lot of progress and then you go backwards. That's what all healing is I make progress and then I feel like I'm gone and then I come back, and then it's not about being completely healed from it, that it no longer comes up in your mind and it's no longer an issue. For some of the deeper pieces, it's just feeling like you have the tools to support yourself when it comes up. It's feeling like it's less intense, or the power that it holds over you is smaller, or you're not derailed as long. You're able to move through the piece a lot quicker. It's about healing is for your happiness and for you to feel good in your body. And so that's what you're looking for, is just incremental steps towards that. Yeah. So let me know if you've had any issues with family members that you'd like me to try and untangle, because they are very situational. Let me know if this was helpful for you, if you have any input, any other things that you've done. There's clearly there's way more that we can do. Sometimes actually, yeah. So I've done this before where like I said, my mother complains about my tone and my voice and all these pieces. And it's literally just the way that I talk, because I don't talk to her any differently than how I talk to other people, but she's the only one who has an issue with it. So, yes, I'm a little petty about that. But I wrote her a letter, you can address it in different spaces. That's where it's knowing their limitation. Okay, well, if they can't receive it because it might be emotionally charged, if they see me crying or whatever it is, write them a letter. Right? Sometimes talking about the thing, but not blaming them. Where you're like, oh, my friend had this issue with her mom. Can you believe, blah, 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 insert the exact issue you're having with your mother, but it's not pointed at the person. So they're willing to receive it a little bit more because they don't feel like it's an attack on them. They're not as defensive and they're more open. And the other piece of advice that I would give is, if you do approach and have a conversation, this is in any conversation, it's very useful that feels difficult or emotional. State what you're looking for and where you're coming from in the beginning. Hey, ring, ring, answer. Hi, what's going on? How are you? Hey, I wanted to chat to you about something. Okay, yeah. I'd really love your undivided attention. This is something that is really important to me and meaningful to me. And I really want to discuss this with you and hope that we can move past this. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm not trying to blame you for anything from the past or what happened. I'm trying to heal and find forward movement so that we can have blah, 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 insert outcome here, a better relationship moving forward. Are you willing and ready and open to receive that? Are you able to have this conversation right now, or are you busy? Is this something that you're open for? You can communicate all these pieces right up front and get a lot of answers and save yourself a lot of time. Because if I probably would have done that for some of those conversations, there have been conversations where I have started that with my mother, and then she's like, okay, I can understand. I'll try this or I'll try that. And she has made some progress, which is why it's been a long-term thing. But I feel like we've reached a stalemate. So it's really important to acknowledge where you're at, what you need, where the other person is at, what they're willing to do, what they're able to do, what they might need, and see if you can come to the middle, and if it's safe for you to come to the middle in some way, shape, or form. I have both examples in my life where one worked out really well and one didn't in using these theories and these approaches. But above all else, it's not about the other person. It's about you, and you deserve healing. And, you know, when we hold these pieces in our body, it doesn't hurt them. It hurts us. You hold this anger, this sadness, this scaredness, the fear. You hold all these pieces, and then it eventually turns into like disease. It eventually turns into anxiety or mental breakdowns, or maybe even an actual disease, right? Because our body is not meant to hold on to these emotions. They are not meant to live in our body for that long. And it really is important that you, if you feel that you need that healing and you need that cycle breaking, that like you address it. You don't need to know what the cycle is even. You don't need to know what it is. You just need to acknowledge and try and meet yourself where you're at, or hire someone who can help you figure it out. Because we often, when we're doing healing, get stuck in the overanalyzing and the overthinking and removing our emotions and our needs, feeling like it's irrational and explaining it away. Like, oh, well, I really want this. But it's like, well, I guess I could forego that. And like, I don't really need this. And it's like, no, these are things that you want, that your body has told you, that your energy and your emotions have told you that you want. Like, you need to acknowledge that. And it's like, well, I can't just go and punch this person in the face. Like, you can visualize doing that. You still deserve to give yourself what you need, no matter how irrational it feels, right? Like, because for me, it's like, oh, well, that seems silly. Like, this person is never going to do that. So why do I keep doing it? Well, it's something that I need. It's something that I need to do for myself then, right? Like, it can feel irrational where you're like, I understand why they lied to me, but I really still have this hurt in my body and I can't let it go. Then you still need to address, and you need to decide how you want to address it. And you need to allow yourself to find that healing and forgiveness and acceptance for yourself, because that other person doesn't know or care sometimes, or isn't aware that that thing is eating away at you and causing you like upsetness or fear, or all these different outcomes. And only you know that. And you might feel like, I can't have access to that healing because that person is unwilling to do these things to meet me halfway, or that person is unsafe for me and I never want to go near them, so the healing door is closed on that. No, it's never closed. Like, you get the ability to heal at any stage as long as you want it. And if it's not the way that you can envision, try and zoom out and see if there's an opportunity for healing elsewhere in a way that still feels good to you. You might need to try out new modalities and things, right? Like, I tried EFT tapping, and that was really helpful. And that's how my generational thing with my great grandfather came up. I didn't know that I was carrying that, but that's what I was navigating towards carrying. Your body and your inner child, they're very intelligent pieces. And if we acknowledge and use and connect and listen to them more, then we can find those answers. And sometimes your healing might start with needing to just build that relationship with the inner child, or with your body and yourself and your emotions, and doing it in a way that feels best to you. Like, that's what I started with first. Understanding, learning things that were bad and not healthy, and then trying to unlearn those pieces, and then learning how to support myself and have new patterns that were healthier, and then addressing deep traumas that I was more suited to address once I learned these pieces, and then letting my authentic self come through, and not the years of stuff that I was raised with, right? And then being able to address and communicate with family members what I was feeling inside, and ask for what I needed, and then go accordingly. And then you heard all the rest of the stuff. So yeah, I'm sending you all love. And I hope that my examples and my life and these things can help you, and can give you permission to find healing that you need, and to not be afraid of being a cycle breaker if you feel that you are that person, and to know that every action and every piece that you take for your own healing journey will be reflected in your family in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, lots of people I know like pray that they ask their spirit guides to communicate with their family members' spirit guides to bring them the healing that they need. I did that as well. And the time that I did it, my mother was saying that she would wake up with these physical aches and pains. And I was like, let me just not, right? Because it's not my job. And yeah, sometimes these patterns are not your job. They're not yours to heal. We have patterns that's a big piece as a cycle breaker, is realizing like you're supposed to heal the patterns that you're supposed to heal. And you don't heal all of them, because that would be more than a lifetime's work. And some patterns, they're not your responsibility to heal. They're just patterns that you're able to see and be aware of because you're not part of it. So yeah, if you want to work with me, like I said, I do holistic therapy, energy healing, ancestral healing. I do all types of different stuff that can help with healing. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. And yeah, thanks for coming back to the podcast. Thanks for listening to the new quote unquote first episode. I made a new intro, new outro. It's all like spacey and like I went like a totally different direction. And if you have any other topics or things that you want me to cover, people that you want me to bring on the podcast, please let me know. And I will hear from you next week. Thank you for listening to your intuition and listening to the Empowered Intuitive podcast. I would absolutely love it if you could leave a review on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts, subscribe or follow the pod wherever you stream, and legit just tell all your spiritual baddie friends and fam about us. You can follow the Empowered Intuitive Pod on IG at the Empowered Intuitive Pod. For updates and fun memes, follow our host Love on IG and TikTok at Love Sakratoff. That's LoveSachartoff. Or head to their website to subscribe to their newsletter, book a session, or attend an upcoming event with them at lovesakratoff.com. And remember, trust your intuition.